One of the questions that Brian and I get asked all the time on our YouTube channel comments and on social media is, do you guys own the stocks that you're talking about? Well, both Brian and I are contractors for the Motley Fool, which means we are required at all times to disclose our holdings for the public. However, those disclosures don't show you our percentage allocations. So in this video, we wanted to walk through the top 10 stocks that make up Brian Stoffel's portfolio. My name is Brian Feroldi.
And my name is Brian Stoffel.
Thanks to Quarter for sponsoring today's video. Well, first, Brian, let's tell people how to find what stocks that we hold.
Brian, if you want to do that, you can go to the Motley Fool's website and type in the names that we have. For me, it's TMF Cheesehead, because I'm from Wisconsin. For you, TMF Typo, because you're not very good at spelling.
Nope, terrible at it. It's a miracle that I ever got through writing a book. But if you look at our profile pages and click on the info and scroll down to the stocks we own, that is a complete list of all the tickers that we own at any given time.
Before we even think about making a trade in the stock market, we need to clear it with the legal department at the Motley Fool and make sure that we immediately update this page so that it reflects what we own.
That's right, and this page is always up to date for both of us. But let's give viewers a more complete view at what your portfolio currently looks like. All right, Brian, so what's your 10th biggest holding?
My 10th biggest holding is definitely the newest out of this group of 10, and that is Airbnb, a company that just came public last year, but I'm very interested in. It's about 5% of my portfolio. Hasn't done much since I bought it.
Now, what is the crux of your thesis for owning Airbnb?
Well, Brian, what I love about this company is I think that they're offering something that's incredibly valuable. They're mission driven, helping anyone to belong anywhere, and they've got a powerful network effect.
Brian, both you and I talked about Airbnb on the channel before. If you want to see that video, click the link in your screen. But this company scored very well on both of our investing checklists.
Yep, Brian. Anything that scores above a 12 is labeled anti-fragile in my category, and Airbnb checks that box.
Moving on to your number 9 holding is the artist formerly known as Google.
That's right. We don't want to call it Alphabet because almost everybody knows it as Google. This is one of my oldest holdings, still about 5% of my portfolio. And as you can see, it has basically increased 8 times in value.
So why have you allowed this company to become such a big part of your portfolio?
Well, Google makes tools that I like. They make my life easier and they're available to anyone. I realize that they use that for advertising dollars, which I'm not a huge fan of. But by investing in Google, you not only get that core business, but all of these other bets that they're working on too.
Yeah, this company scores extremely well on both of our investing checklists. And what's most amazing is that none of their other bets have really paid off. What will happen to the company's financials once one finally does? All right, time for number 8. What do we got?
Well, we got a stock that I bug you about all the time, and that is Axon Enterprises. It's one that I've owned for 4 years, and I've basically talked about it every day for the past 4 or 5 years.
I can tell you that I personally ignored Axon until I met you and you talked my ear off about it. And I gotta say, I like it now just as much as you do. But give us the bull case. What does this company do?
So Axon started out as Taser International. They made stun guns for police forces. Their mission is to protect life, and they thought that was one way to do it. But 10 years ago, they got into the body camera business and then started creating software to help organize, store, and search through that. Now they're making other tools that help make life easier for police officers and, more importantly, hold everyone accountable and give people the time to connect in their community.
Yeah, we've done a deep dive video on Axon too. If you want to see that, click the link you see on your screen. All right, number 7 is an up-and-coming e-commerce company I hear about.
Yeah, maybe you've heard about it, Amazon. This used to actually be my largest holdings by a wide margin. It's still done a great job, increasing 15 times in value, and I've owned it since 2010.
Now, you just said used to be your top holding. Is something going wrong?
Well, here's the thing. The way that Amazon works is they build all these tools to service the everything store. That's where Fulfillment by Amazon came from. That's where AWS came from, and then they offer it to the rest of the world. But their mission since day one is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. Advertising is starting to become a bigger part of the business, but I don't think that serves customers well at all, and so that's why I decided to trim my stake.
Fair enough. You don't think the company is living out its mission as well as it did before. But even with this company scores extraordinarily well on both of our investing checklists.
It does. It's tied for the highest score of any company I've put through it.
All right, time for number 6. What the heck is Atlassian?
Well, this is a company that a lot of people might not know about. I've only owned it for 3 or 4 years, and it's a little over 5% of my portfolio. Atlassian is basically making tools that allow teams to work together, especially in today's distributed work-from-home workforce.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about this company, but what's your bull case moving forward?
Well, the thing is Atlassian makes tools that make life easier for people that work at companies that have distributed workforces. And this chart shows that the company not only holds on to those customers because these tools work, but they get those customers to add more tools over time, which is great for those companies, the people working at them, and shareholders.
Brian, this is a company that yet again you have banged the drum on, and this company scores unbelievably well on both of our checklists. All right, Brian, up next is your top 5 largest holdings. Before we get to those, we wanted to give a shout out to this video's sponsor, which is Quarter. Quarter's mission is to make every interaction between companies and their investors meaningful. Quarter does so by providing frictionless access to conference calls, investor presentations, transcripts, and earnings reports from around the world straight to your pocket for no cost. If you're interested in giving Quarter a try for free, simply visit the App Store of your choice and search for Quarter. That's Quartr. Thanks, Quarter, for sponsoring the video. All right, Brian, let's talk about your 5th biggest holding, which, to be honest, when this company came public, I said, boy, I don't like that name.
And you know what? That's why we dig into the company itself, and that company is Datadog. This is a stock that I've only owned for 3 years, but it's already quadrupled in value. And that's because, like many others, it's designing things that makes life easier, especially at tech companies.
Now, we recently did a deep dive into Datadog, but remind us, what does this company do?
Well, this company was started by 2 individuals who worked at an education tech company, but they realized that the development side and the operations side of the company, they didn't talk to each other much. So they created tools that allowed them to talk together. They've now looped in security departments as well. And by looking at this timeline, you can see how they've rolled out more tools over time, and importantly, customers are using those tools in droves.
This company has executed nearly flawlessly ever since it came public. Revenue growth has been high, and man, oh man, does this company check a ton of boxes in what we look for in great businesses. All right, time to pivot a little bit to the cybersecurity market, and your number 4 holding, Crowdstrike.
That's right. I did a write-up on Crowdstrike once for the Motley Fool, and after I did it, I said, man, there's a lot to like about this company, and there has been. It's almost tripled in value in just 3 years.
Yeah, one thing that impressed me about Crowdstrike is its ability to upsell customers over time.
Yeah, it really is impressive. And the reason I chose this image is because they shared a similar one when they went public in 2019, and there were 11 possible tools to choose from. Today, there's 21 possible tools, and customers are again adopting additional tools in droves.
Love that, and this company blew away both of our investing checklists, so a very high quality business. All right, moving on to number 3, which is a stock we have yet to talk about on this channel.
That's right, and that stock is MongoDB. What this company does is it makes databases that you can use and get and organize information, even if it's not in rows and columns.
Yeah, MongoDB can be a difficult company to wrap your head around, but one thing that really stood out to me about this company, it was founded by the same team that founded DoubleClick. DoubleClick was an acquisition that Google made many years ago, and that was one of the key acquisitions that allowed Google to become Google.
Now, Brian, one of the things that I really want to highlight about MongoDB is that I invested in this because I liked what I saw, but I am not going to claim to totally understand how this company works or what makes it so much better than anybody else. But what I will say, and this is important, is that when a stock does very well over a very long period of time, even if I don't totally understand what's happening, I'm just going to let it run until it gets to be too big. And that's why MongoDB has grown to be my number 3 position.
The thing that I always like to watch with MongoDB is the number of developers that are using the platform. And if you look at that metric, it's clearly heading in the right direction. And aside from that, when we look at the rest of the business, this company scored very well on both of our checklists. Moving on to the number 2, this is also one of my top holdings as well.
Yeah, and Brian, people might not know this, but I spend a part of every year in Central America, and this is a company that focuses on Latin America, and that is MercadoLibre. I love this company. It's increased almost 8 times in value since we purchased it, and I'm a big believer in all the things it's trying to do in that section of the world.
And those returns are despite this company getting essentially cut in half over the last couple of months. But what is the bull case for MercadoLibre from here?
Well, look, MercadoLibre's mission is to democratize commerce and finance. So it has its MercadoLibre marketplace platform, which is a combination of eBay and Amazon, but then it has a payment solution, Mercado Pago. It has a fulfillment solution, Mercado Envios. It has a credit solution in Mercado Credito. Those are the 4 biggest ones, and who knows what they'll look like in years to come.
Yeah, I love the optionality of this company, and not only does it have optionality, it's executing brilliantly on each of those categories. Beyond that, this company scored very well in both of our checklists.
And Brian, when we were talking about Amazon, I said it was tied for the highest score. This is the company that it's tied with, MercadoLibre, at a score of 15.
Moving on to your number 1 holding, Brian, your largest holding is Shopify.
What's impressive about Shopify is I've owned it for about 5 years, and it's already about a 17 bagger, and that includes with the stock almost getting cut in half in the past couple of months. This is a great company that has been a great stock for our portfolio.
Yeah, Shopify is one of those businesses that checks just about every box that I look for in a great business, and I am particularly fond of this company's founder and CEO, Toby Lutke.
I am too, and what I love is that they have created a platform that basically anyone can benefit from the big companies to the small mom and pops and people just trying to get started off the ground. If you need an e-commerce presence and you need things taken care of, Shopify can handle almost all of them for you.
Shopify is a business that taught me a lot of lessons because I ignored it for a few years, even though many smart people I knew were buying it, simply because I was overly focused on the company's valuation. I finally gave in when the stock was trading at about $250 per share, and that, even though it was a very high valuation, proved to be a savvy move. All right, Brian, we just walked through your top 10 holdings, but tell us, how has your portfolio done recently?
Well, Brian, this is where we're going to see a little bit of blood in the streets. It hasn't been pretty. In just the 1 month of 2022, my portfolio is actually down 19%. The overall market is down, the S&P 500 by 6%, but mine by much more.
Does the picture get any brighter if we zoom out over the last year?
Believe it or not, Brian, the picture actually gets worse in terms of underperformance. Sure, I'm only down 3%, but that's at the same time that the S&P 500 is up 21%.
All right, well, we always preach having a long-term time horizon. What's the picture like if we look like over a 3-year period?
Well, it gets much better, and this goes to show why if anyone ever tells you what their returns were over a year or 2 years, that's not enough. You've got to zoom out. Over the last 3 years, this portfolio has done much better, returning 170%. Put in perspective, that's almost tripling, while the S&P 500 was up 67%.
How about if we zoom out even more and look at the 5-year returns?
It gets better. The portfolio has more than quadrupled in value, while the S&P 500 has basically just doubled. Again, the longer time frames are what really count.
And finally, how have you done over the last 10 years?
All right, Brian, this is a really interesting example. Go back to mid-November 2021, and my portfolio was up over 900% over the past 10 years. It has fallen a ton, and that's been painful, but it is still doing so much better than indexed investing in the S&P 500, returning basically a 7-bagger in 10 years. It underlines why volatility can be tough, but over the long run, it can be worth it if you're invested in quality, anti-fragile businesses.
Now, there's no telling what your portfolio might do next, but as you say, this is all a big experiment for you to test out anti-fragility in the portfolio.
That's absolutely right, Brian. And the way I like to think about it is we can either make gains or learn, but we're not losing either way.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And if you enjoyed this video and like us do it next week with my portfolio, let us know in the comment section below. Brian's out.